Hi again. Thank you for choosing In My Shoes. I'm Hilda Broady, your host. Today, we're going to try something different. I have with me Joe Smith, aka Bones Kiel, Kiel. Welcome back, Joe.
Thank you, Hilda. Thank
Okay, how
you.
you
Thank
doing?
you. It feels a little, it is different. Instead of co-hosting this time with you, I am the subject.
There you go.
And I don't know how this is going to turn out. I'm sure it's going to be good because I know that your goal for this program is to try to instill a little hope in people in these terrible times, crazy times that we're living in.
Exactly.
And I am more than confident we'll do that. I just can't tell you how we're going to do it.
Okay.
So let's just do like we always do, just talk, real talk.
Oh, I forgot to give you feedback, though, from the end of life preparation.
Yes.
People were actually asking for a copy of the show because you put forth that people never thought about life insurance in that manner, in that
Wow.
instead of waiting online to give shoes or sneakers to the kid, give that child a life insurance policy and let them know early on that it's most important. So I think we did a good thing there. I think we did
I'm glad to hear that.
I was wondering because it played a lot though. We played it a lot because it was really something that was on my mind, and I felt this was something the information needed to get out there, and no one had really done it that way, and to break it down and provide them with information that made sense.
And end of life care, and as you may know, the last few years, not necessarily by choice, but I've been prepared to work with people in some form of or another who are preparing to transition. Just recently, another one of my clients transitioned. It's never easy. I am human. And in that particular case, I'll keep their privacy, but in that particular case, I talked with the family, about life insurance. Um, it was a dark conversation, but one we needed to have. And who knew that less than a year later she'd be gone? And she was a senior, above 80 or above. And even to that particular crowd, we'll just, on that life insurance piece, if you don't have it in place, and I know on the television you see these commercials that say up to 85 in certain states,
Yes.
it may work for you. Maybe it won't work for you. But in any case, we know the end is coming. So in this particular client's case, they had already thought about it. The life insurance wasn't in place. So they had they started a burial fund.
Oh, okay.
And every month putting a few dollars into the pot or whatever the case is. So whatever it takes. But it just helps that when that time comes that you leave with a little dignity. I'm not judgmental. You do what you have to do, but to do a GoFundMe page or passing the hat around at that time is
It's sickening.
because it's already stressful enough.
I know. I've been there.
Yeah,
I've been there. So
it's already with all of the things you have to do. You really don't have time to grieve and mourn at the time, and worried about finances. And it is a big business, as we talked about before. People put thousands, tens of thousands, into this end of life thing, and when you have to worry about money on top of it just makes it all, it's a mess. Yeah, so I'm really happy to hear that people benefited from that.
I want to thank you for that because I learned. I was like, oh, I didn't know that. Oh wow. Oh
And
wow.
you know what? And I was digging in the recesses of my brains. 'Cause it was back. I haven't been in the insurance industry in a while, but when you really learn something, it sticks with you. And I know that laws and stuff change, so at least I think we put people on the right path to start asking questions, looking at life insurance differently. Because when I grew up in the South, and we had back then what they called industrial insurance policies. Like my mom would pay a nickel and a dime for the premiums, and you get maybe $100, up to maybe $500. Now back then that money could do a little bit more, but it was better than nothing. So we always had that. It was instilled in me. I watched my mother struggling, and my father until he died too, to keep these. There was a lot of us, 10 or 11 of us, to keep these little nickel and dime policies going. but they believe that, God forbid something should happen. If it didn't do all, it would help.
I understand that because my mother kept starting them. There was 13 of us.
Yeah, right.
My mother would start, and we weren't down south. We were in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And then it would lapse, and then she'd get upset.
Yeah.
So finally, when my father passed away, though, there was none. So the next month, I said, Ma, I'm not passing the hat for you. I know you're not going anytime soon.
Right.
And so I got her life insurance, and I said I'm going to have them take it out, have them take the premium out of my checking account, and you can give me back my money. But
Right.
she did that for a whole 3 months,
Good.
and then
good.
she said, "You wanted it, you got it." So, and I gladly paid it because all I could think was I don't want to pass the hat. I never want to pass the hat again. And when she passed away, it was like, oh, she did have it, and we could take care of Mom and not worry about the undertaker and the church and the this and the that. We just take care of Mom.
It takes a load off.
It really was.
So I'm glad that, because that's something, especially among our people, poor people, people of color, black, whatever you want to call them. These are things we don't normally talk about. Mostly because no one talks to us about it. So I'm glad
We don't even know what questions to ask. That's why people are not going to ask because I don't know what to ask. I mean, I still have that same policy that I had in 1979, and I'm still paying it. And I initially told the man I didn't want to pay for the rest of my life, but that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So.
And once again, as I said then, I have no ties to the industry. But in the case of that, hopefully you'll find a reputable insurance agent or broker that can go through your policy, because each policy is unique, and help you understand exactly what you have. I think the worst thing is, other than not having insurance, is having insurance but not having the insurance you think you have. So you're paying in your whole life, and then when that time comes, your family members or loved ones say, well, what the heck is this, Hilda? What am I going to do with this? This is $500. You paid in $20,000, but it's $500. And I'm exaggerating a little bit. But to really understand the policy that you have. And once again, I don't think I'll get back into the industry. When I was in it, my regional manager at the time, and he helped me. He's why I'm talking to you today. He told me, he says, Joe, I said, yeah. You're doing a good job. I said, okay. He says, but this is a business. I said, okay. He said, you might consider working in the nonprofit industry.
You were helping people?
Yeah, because my beliefs, my values were, I went into it to help people, especially, and I would serve all people, but especially I knew that in the black communities, we didn't understand. And I work in, my offices were in Manhattan, so I was able to see both sides of the spectrum. And I saw where other groups of people were coming for this, because they knew the benefits. And I saw where my people, we mostly say we can't afford it, and you cannot afford not to have it, but we can't afford it, we don't understand it. So I made it my business to reach out to the uninformed and those that couldn't afford the $1 million policies. My personal thing was I would only sell you what you needed, and more importantly, what you could afford. Because as we talked about lapsing, it doesn't make sense to have a policy today and next month you can't afford it. So when I broke it down to people, so I made sales. Now what they should have noticed was my retention rate was nearly 100%. That means whomever I sold to kept the policy.
It didn't lapse.
It didn't lapse. And so he told me.
Maybe they didn't want them to.
No, they wanted more. And it was.
They wanted you to sell more to the same people?
No, more to anybody.
Oh.
See, and I took my time. I explain and go through every line. Take my time and make sure you got what you needed and what you could afford, because then that means you will more than likely be able to maintain it. So that was okay if I could do that 100 times a day. And I wasn't concerned about volume. I was concerned about the quality. And he told me that, and he says, you might consider a career in nonprofit. You're a good guy and all, but we need money here.
Okay.
So I like that. Over the years, I thanked him. I said, because that's why I'm talking to you now. That put me in this direction, to take the focuses off of coming up to the north as a younger man, starting out on Woolworth, going to school, and then down on Wall Street, I was accustomed to the business culture. Everything's about that dollar, making that money, and not for me, but for the business owners. And so, as I matured and went further into insurance, I brought in my own personal values, which was not against making money, but making sure that the people got what they needed and what they could afford. See, a true salesperson will sell you a glass of water when you're drowning. Mm-hmm. They get off on the high of selling, and nothing's wrong with that. That's some people. The salesperson is just the drive is that next sale, the next big sale. It doesn't matter what you did yesterday. What matters is what you're going to do today and tomorrow. So a true salesperson will sell someone that's drowning a glass of water. There's no, I don't want to say morality, or it's business. It's about the sale. And unfortunately, that's just not me. So I like to think that director, that regional manager, he helped me out a lot. He helped push me in a direction. And I guess we're going to get into that direction in a little bit, because it is one of hope. As I was preparing for this segment, we talked, and you says, well, people need hope. Now, what are your thoughts? I mean, what is your assessment on? I'm asking you questions, but on what we're dealing with now in this country, with the school shootings and under this current administration in Washington, D.C.
I don't think that he's wrong in everything that he's doing. He just goes about it in such a way as he antagonizes so many people. It scares me that our president is saying arm the teachers. Yeah. Can you imagine?
No.
I mean, we had a segment on about having the metal detectors in the high school. In the high school, we just talk about the high schools and how it's not a jail. And you're going in to learn, and now our president is saying, the president is saying, arm the teachers, because and then last night he said, or recently he said, he would have run into the school not knowing, and that's kind of scary too, because
but he would. He's telling the truth.
but that's kind of scary too, because you're not running in. The 4 minutes that the deputy, where was he running to? I think they were upset that he didn't go outside, but if his training said to set up how do you?
Hilda, every time I listen to the news more than I watch it. But when I first heard that about the deputy and he was out, his actions in the first 4 or 5,
4 minutes.
4 minutes. And wherever I was standing or doing, I just said, he was scared. The training aside, it kind of goes against.
But where was he going though? He should have run
into the line of fire. But I really think he was scared. I mean, he's human. It takes a special type of human to run into the line of fire.
Because shouldn't he find out where it's coming from first, or just run into it? You don't know what you run up against. And I think those 4 minutes, it was rapid fire. It was like,
yeah, it was.
He had an AK-15, whatever 15,
an automatic weapon.
Well, yeah, and so he's shooting real fast, and he's shooting a lot. So.
And there's also chaotic. I'm sure there's
and the
people
kids are running,
screaming and falling and blood, and it's chaos.
But the whole thing is this hunt. We're so. I think the tweeting needs to stop for a minute, and let people sit down and take notice of each aspect, because so much is going on at the same time, and then we have horrible weather to boot.
I want to I'll backtrack for 1 minute. Now, after that shooting, and I don't take credit for thoughts are not mine, but I'll call her name because she's been a guest on this program, Keisha Forrester Hopkins. Mm-hmm. And she posted on Facebook something that made me really think. And instead of arming the teachers, which was, I'm sure that's not the way to go, but one thing that may help all these instances of shooting in schools, and Keisha said, she says, why don't you start by installing, as much as I don't like them, the metal detectors like you do in the inner city schools. And it's a no-brainer. And you have to, in every school. Now, to me, the real question or the real issue, and I think sometimes, like I'm saying, that's the obvious answer. It makes sense after I read her post. So we'll go, Keisha, that makes a lot of sense. Put the metal.
How much they cost?
Well, it'll be cheaper. It'll be cheaper, and I didn't do any research, but I'm sure it'll be cheaper than training all teachers to carry weapons. And it'd certainly be cheaper than they want to bring in police forces into all of the schools. And once again, not a Pollyanna, the metal detectors won't stop everything, but it will help reduce it. Now, what bothers me is I think the reason why people aren't really talking about it at higher levels is because they understand, which is what we've spoken earlier, the psychological damage. That school to prison pipeline that Hilda's been hammering in forever and a day. The psychological trauma. And I talked on this program before about going into Erasmus High School in Brooklyn and what it did to me. And I couldn't imagine the students coming in every day going through these, it's like going through airport security. And however, so it has a psychological damaging component, and I'm sure that's one reason why it won't be considered or not readily considered for the suburban schools and schools that are not within the inner city, because they understand the psychological trauma and how it sets you up, that a school to prison pipeline. So I hope they tread carefully on that one, because however they broach that subject, it's going to show some truth about what was done or what is being done in the inner city communities.
I think what's so different about what they're doing is they're addressing the guns, yes, but how much notification do you have to have about that guy that shot up the school? Because I mean, it was going back for years, and it was like, okay, I mean, as far as January, somebody said he's got guns and he's threatening, and they said okay. So that's kind of scary, and I think that if he was of a different complexion,
Right.
okay, because even when the news came on when the shooting happened, when I didn't hear about his whole history in the first 10 minutes, I said he ain't black.
Yeah.
Because we would have known about his grandfather's history in them first 10 minutes if he was black. And media is very biased that way. If you look at any of the shootings that have gone on, they said shooter. He was a shooter.
And not a monster.
He was a shooter. He was a shooter.
And not a thug.
He was a shooter.
And he's still alive.
Exactly.
So
he walked out with his friends. I mean, with his classmates. He got rid of his stuff and he knew where to go. So that's another thing. The bias is so that if somebody had reported, I won't even say even if he was Hispanic.
Right.
Because Cruz, but he's not that kind of Cruz.
Right.
But they would have at least checked it.
You mentioned an important thing, which is about the signs and the notices beforehand. Now, real life story, one of my sisters, she retired. She went back out to do a little gig as a paraprofessional within the school system in the South. And she was subbing, I think, in a class, substitute teacher. And I think a 7-year-old, we just recently had this conversation. I think it was 2 7-year-olds, maybe little kids. And one talked about shooting the other. And so what she did was she took the child, stopped the class, and took the child on down to the principal's office and explained what had happened. And I told her, I said, I think you did a good thing. Because somebody would say, well, that's just a 7-year-old. They just talking. But nowadays,
You don't know.
and I told her, I'm glad you did what you did, even if they thought you overreacted, because God forbid that child did reach into her bag or his bag and pull out
You don't know if he stole daddy's gun or went
You
under
don't know.
it.
So I said, you did good. I said, because, God forbid, then they would have said, well, didn't you hear? You should have reacted.
But you hear this, a 7-year-old is
Yeah.
making you afraid.
Yeah.
Or at least getting you to look in a direction that when they played cops and robbers
Right.
when we were
It was
kids,
nothing.
it
Yeah,
was you
yeah.
used your finger. Now
Yeah.
they use real things.
So I think now we have to listen to every sign.
Exactly.
I think things around us are speaking to us. Certainly the weather is speaking to us. I think the whole universe is speaking to us, but we have to learn how to listen and interpret what we're hearing. Know when Tommy or Sally is just kidding around, or know when, something's off here. And I heard something that I haven't verified myself, but after the shooting in Florida, I heard people were saying that there have been 18, they're saying shootings, I would say gun incidents within schools this year alone.
Yeah, since January.
Since January. And most people are saying, well, it can't be true. I didn't hear it on the news.
It wasn't local.
Yeah.
It was. This was massive. He killed
It was a massacre,
17
right.
people. He murdered 17 people. Is it one or two here, one over here? They're not.
Or even if no one, just the point that if someone had a weapon and the school was shut down. So I think that's what that 18
Sign of a
includes.
time.
But what troubles me is when people say, well, I didn't hear it in the news, it can't be true.
Sometimes when you hear it on the news, it can't be true.
That's true. You mentioned the media earlier and the power of the media. And unfortunately, we're at a place now where if it's not on the news, and I'll go a step further, if it wasn't on Facebook, it can't be true.
Oh, okay, well, I don't try not to go there too often. So.
Or if it wasn't wasn't tweeted,
Nobody tweeted it.
it can't be true. But just the power of the media. That's why I'm happy for programs like this one.
But people are really are, and I'm noticing it now, more and more hopeless, and they really are throwing up their hands. Because they're saying, no matter what we do, no matter what, and in my neighborhood, and I've been there. This year is my 40th year.
Wow.
September 7th will be 40
Congratulations.
years
Wow.
in one place, and that's unique because when I first moved out of, I went from dorm to dorm to dorm to dorm to apartment, and I was moving every 6 months. People were penciling me in.
Wow.
And I said, let me find me someplace where I can afford it and I don't need a roommate. I'm never going to move, and that's what I did. But I'm watching my neighborhood as it's changing back into a neighborhood because it went from nice to drugs
Right.
to nice. And now the children have grown up, but they haven't moved. So
Right.
now they're staying in the neighborhood and it's nice again.
Good, good.
And I'm hoping that those people will keep, because they're not in jail. That's the thing. I watched people grow up and not go to jail also.
That's
which
amazing.
is what it was scaring me because everybody was disappearing.
Yeah.
Everybody was, and I was saying, where's so and so, so and so? What are we gonna do? That's why I was beginning to feel, oh, damn, I don't know. It is kind of hopeless because you saved 10 and 1,000 went that way. It is about the love, and it is, and no, everybody keeps saying, yeah, right, Hilda. You keep saying it's about the love. Well, if we don't love, then how can we be halfway decent? Don't leave out the love.
No,
Okay.
no, please, but it's all about love. Without love, there's nothing else. The thing about hope, and you talked about your neighborhood and how it's gone through changes, and certainly the whole city, all of New York City as well as the rest of the country. I think the last 40 years or so has been really, and congratulations on 40 years in that one place. That's stability. We're gonna get to that in a minute. That's stability, that's strength, that's perseverance, that's endurance, all of which is needed to realize hope.
Okay.
Since the early 80s, I remember as a younger person, it started with, remember when the AIDS crisis came through? And I'm talking slowly about that because AIDS is still a problem. It's just that you don't hear it on the evening news anymore. The power of the media. And coming of age as a teenager, young adult, you had the AIDS, and after AIDS, or not even after it, during it, then the crack cocaine epidemic. And to the younger folks that's listening, they can't begin to comprehend what we're trying to talk about right now. I remember coming up to New York in 1986, and I tell people now, it always seemed like there was a dark cloud, even on a sunny day. It's like it was a dark cloud that loomed over the city.
Really?
At least through my eyes, and I have special eyes. We'll get there in a minute. That's the metaphysical part of me. I sometimes see things that others can't see, and perhaps that cloud I'm talking about, I'm sure it wasn't a physical cloud. We did have sunny days, but it seemed like there was always a dark cloud over the city. You had the AIDS on one hand, you had the crack cocaine epidemic on the other. And people talk about people disappearing. You would see someone one day and they were, healthy, living life, and the next day you wouldn't see them, or you would see them and wouldn't recognize them. Like, what happened? Well, they got caught up in something. And as a young man, it took a lot to have hope. And I talk about this cloud, and I can see it vividly. And once again, I'm sure it wasn't a physical cloud. I was probably seeing an energy. As human beings, we give off, some people call it an aura, or an energy, essence. And the energy in New York City at that time was off the charts. But it required hope to get through it. Fast forward on now, the problems haven't been solved. I've been working down in Brooklyn with an organization that I'm affiliated with, and we work with the New York State Department of Health, whose goal under, I think it was Governor Cuomo, his 2020 plan was to end all new cases of HIV in New York by the year 2020. It's called a 2020 plan. So they do this by targeting faith-based organizations or churches and bringing this information to the community. Because back in the day, in the 80s, it was in your face. And nowadays, if we solely rely on mainstream media, we would think that
there was no more AIDS.
No more AIDS, no more new cases of HIV. And I'm shocked to learn that people are still using crack.
Oh, yes.
But see, when you rely on the news, on media, you would think, well, that problem must have been solved because maybe it's not as prevalent.
Opioids.
Yeah, the opioids.
It's a theme song now.
Really, opioids.
So opioids, because now your prescription drugs are taking over, whereas you don't even have to smuggle them into the country anymore.
Right.
Just get a prescription. And now they're busting the doctors who were writing the prescriptions, who've made millions and millions of dollars on, and then it's just the same old stuff on a different day.
Well, and hats off to Carol Tyrell from New York State Department of Health. She's the, I guess her title is the HIV coordinator for the state. Okay. So in addition to the AIDS and HIV programs, they also bring in programs. You mentioned the opioids, and because what's on the rise now in the city is heroin, and bring in treatment and that N-word, not the N-word.
Another N-word? Narcotics?
No, right, not Narcolon. It's the
the thing that they use to stop
Noxicon. Yeah.
To stop.
Sorry, Carol. I can never. I call it the N-word. But if someone's ODing, you inject this. So I went through the training. I'll do more training in Brooklyn, but I have that actual kit, and it's not. I'm saying injected, but it's not like an injection.
It's like a more of a.
Now what I have. It's like you put it to the nose. It's like an aerosol.
You inhale it?
Yeah, you inhale it. And,
that's good then.
Yeah, and
Narcopan or something like that.
I know when you
I've heard it.
you're gonna put the proper term in the caption on this
I
program.
sure will.
Sorry, Carol,
Because we can't remember right now.
Noxicon or Noxicon or whatever it is, but because now the heroin, I can see that particularly in the area in Brooklyn around Washington and Fulton. I think there's an actual methadone clinic in that area. I remember going back some 10 or 15 years. I was on the A train coming from Rockaway, and I saw this person on the train, and he was
nodding.
he was nodding. He would go all the way down, but never hit the floor. And once again, I came up from the South, and when the first wave came through the city, I wasn't here. I was in small town USA. But instinctively, I've seen enough TV, so I says, I think that person is on them. I think that's what heroin,
That's what it was in our neighborhoods in the 30s, 40s, 50s. It's not this. That's why when they say it's an epidemic,
Right.
most people of color are going, so glad you finally realize that it's happening. And the only reason that you realize that it's happening is because now it's in your
All right,
backyard
okay.
as well. Because it's been in our community since.
Forever.
I mean,
Yeah.
I have relatives who are old, and they call them junkies, stone
Right.
cold junkies. So that they changed the terminology, but it's still heroin. It's still heroin.
Only Hilda can do that. I was trying to dress it up. She just wouldn't call it what it was.
That's what-
Now, what determines the epidemic or pandemic status? It depends
on who's doing it.
who's being affected.
Here you go.
So,
So when I can go, now the kids can go in the medicine cabinets and get the drugs. So now it's a problem. But we were screaming problem long time, long time.
Yeah.
Just like now they're expanding the treatment. They were shutting down treatment
Right.
facilities in 15. Because when I took my case act, they were like, "Well, why are you doing that when they're shutting down the thing?" And I was like, "Because they're coming up with new drugs. That's why I took the training, because somebody said Molly, and I thought it was a girl. So it was time to take some training so I
Yeah.
could learn. Although I've decided now that I'm not going to pursue that.
Well, you're
But
not.
I'm not going to. My case act T runs out in August, and bye-bye so long, because I'm never going to work for anybody else. So why spend my time unwisely? But we haven't, it hasn't, and that's what kind of makes people feel like they should be hopeless. I know that we shouldn't be hopeless, but same old stuff on a different day. How call it a different name? Okay, fine.
Yeah, so these are the evolution and revolutions of trials and tribulations. Now, we went back 40 years, through AIDS, drugs, and now, in addition to all of that, it seems like whoever the they is, keep adding new troubles to the pile. Because as we've said, the other problems are still there. HIV, AIDS, epidemic level drug use, and on top of that now we have and I feel for the younger people, where you don't know that when you go to this government mandated school, that you're going to come out alive.
And you have no choice. You have to go.
Yeah, you
have no choice. Your parents get in problems if you don't go to school.
Yeah.
I bet you the number of people who are going to be homeschooling is going to triple in the next 2 years.
Now,
rather than have my kid go to school
as a solution, I can't blame them.
But then the kid loses that socialist. That homeschool is not you may learn the academics, but the social aspects and
even the discipline.
That whole discipline, no, because nobody disciplined. Well, I don't know about the new parents,
Yeah, it's
but
different now.
those parents are not as because we were terrified of our parents. We knew better than to even think, because we actually believed that our mother could read our minds, but to think wrong because there was gonna be repercussions.
Remember, not too long ago when the government stepped in and went after parents, and they came up with no spanking. And
Yes.
now this is,
yes.
and I'm not
Time
making
out.
light of I do know that there were really some true cases of abuse. I'm not making light of that. But parents coming in and telling you how to raise your children, how not to discipline your children, and which has always troubled me because this same government that tells me you can't spank your kids, but as soon as that kid end up in the government's hand,
You didn't do what you were supposed to do. But
they beat the hell out of them.
But they told me, somebody told me, Bernadine Ferrani was on it. She says, you can't leave a mark.
Right, right.
You can spank your child. You can spank, because I kept saying, wow, because my mother didn't leave, we got whelps though, because we bruise easily.
Right.
But she said, you can't leave a mark, but you cannot spare the rod, and if you do spare the rod, you are going to spoil that child. That child is going to.
That's what it says. Spare the
says it.
rod, spoil
So
the child.
we really have to.
But the hypocrisy of government to
Is-
come in and tell you,
They took it all the way to the other extreme.
and we've done programs here, particularly in my shoes too, about police brutality and that's blatant abuse, and so the same government that says
You don't do
you
it.
don't beat your children, but as soon as they get into my clutches, I just
will.
beat the crap out of them. So it's a hypocrisy. So talking about hope, and I know we're taking a long way to hope. We're going to get to hope in a minute. We're just talking about life, and how do you find hope in situations that seem hopeless? Now, I started off back in the 80s to talk about myself personally, and when seemingly all around you is crumbling, I talk about the dark cloud I will see over the city, whether it be physical or spiritual, this image that I capture. And back then, New York was different. It wasn't like this gentrified New York City we see now. Remember the abandoned buildings and some parts of the city, Harlem, East New York, was just this desolate. Browns were just like acres and acres of nothing. It was just
Now it's
different now. So this is not the New York that was when I came here. So you might sometimes, some people lived on a block and they might have been the only person on that block. Everything else might have been abandoned. So I'm talking about trying to find hope when everything around you seems despair. Nothing good on the news, television, nothing to read. How do you find hope? Most people will tell you, especially among black people, we're always looking for that leader, for that hero, that savior. And what Bones is trying to say is, in order to survive in this world that we find ourselves in, you cannot look without. You can only look within. That's poetic. I should put that down on paper.
Yeah, so
But seriously, you have to look within yourself. And I hope I do as well as I did with insurance. I'm going to try to get into a little geography and a little psychology in a minute. But when you think about the universe, you think about the earth, and we are told and we believe that about 72% of the earth is covered with water. And that's on a macrocosmic level. Now, when you think about me as a person, or you as a person, our human body, we are told and believe that 72% of our human body is water or liquid. Light bulb. There's no coincidence. All right, so you have the universe as a whole, the macro, then you have the micro, and one mirrors the other. Water, earth, wind, fire, air, and space, that's what makes up what we call the universe. That is also what makes up what we call our human body, the same elements. So I'm going somewhere with these thoughts. Talking about the hope and the hero, the leader. So and I'm going to postulate right here that then each of us become a microcosm of the macrocosm. That means each of us becomes a universe within ourselves. So that's why I can say with assurance, the leader that you're looking for, look within. You're the queen of your kingdom. I'm the king of my kingdom. And, you know, and not to be gender specific in this age, but you're your own leader. And I think our job or our challenge in life is to keep the perfect balance within our universe, within our self-universe, because we know on the outside, within the physical universe that we call, you know, Earth and space and stuff, and when we can see this happening now, young people are dealing with a lot. We are too. I mean, everybody with what they call a global warming and the melting of the ice caps. Remember that 72% of the Earth is water. Now, if that changes in any direction, and don't keep me exact on 72, but within a certain range. If it's too much water, then you have what? Floods.
Mudslides.
Mudslides. Everything's out of whack. If it's too little water, you have droughts.
Drowning. I mean, deserts.
Exactly. So it has to be balanced. And same within our internal universe, within our bodies, that 72% of liquid. If that is too high, then you have water retention, among other illnesses, lung issues. And if it's too low, it's not good. So it's about balancing, looking for that hero, looking for that leader. And I'm spending some time on this because that is the only way you're going to find hope in times that seems hopeless. You can't look to to Washington, D.C. They got their own issues. If they ain't grabbing somebody into something else, you know, with all the sexual abuse and that's going on, this is crazy times.
Well, this is revelations. This is revelations. Come on, this has been that has been going. It's part of the whole society, and it has been for so long that people are having difficulty comprehending the extent of it. But it was, I mean, I was watching an old episode of MASH.
Mm-hmm.
That was the most sexist program. But we laughed, and
Right.
it was popular because
Right.
that was just how it was, and we assumed that's how. Now, until Bill Cosby got busted,
Yeah.
now everybody is saying, no, you can't do this anymore. We're not going to take it anymore, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing. But now, hopefully, women will take those jobs that those predators have been occupying, and maybe we can get a little peace going. I was getting hope because I was saying, well, now we can step up and take over. If we step up and take over, maybe we can make the changes that have been talked to us about, but not necessarily addressed. Really addressed.
Now you make a good point. You make many good points, but about peace. Now, you just shot right to it, but that's what I was trying to say about.
sorry.
No. Earlier when I talked about the 72% of water and how the balance, when on the universal level, when it's all proportioned appropriately, then it's peace. And the same within our bodies, when everything is proportioned in the right amounts, then we're at peace. And when things are not, when it's disproportionate, then it's not peace, it's not at ease, it's what we begin to call dis-ease or disease. Mm-hmm. Now, with the women, and I'm broaching this one carefully, I believe in justice and peace. I believe that we should all truly get along. And I think we can only do that by learning a phrase that I'm always using now, learning to live and let live. Understanding what it means that when I say, well, this works for me, and Hilda says that this works for me, and who am I? I didn't walk in your shoes. You're not in my shoes. We all have different shoes. We're
separate entities.
Separate, and I'm careful.
But we're together.
I'm glad separate, but now we're always talking unity, which is true. But we're uniting. We're whole. Each of us is whole within and out of ourselves, and so you're not my other half. You're whole. You're Hilda. You know, you're perfectly balanced. You're 72% water. You're earth, wind, air, fire. You're in balance. You're whole. And I'm Joe, I'm Bones, I'm whole. Young people and older people alike, don't look for anyone else to complete you. We're going to get to hope in a minute. These are all the necessary components to have hope. You can't look without, you got to look within. You have to understand that you are complete within and of yourself, that your creator, this intelligence, God, or whatever you call it, has given you all the tools necessary to get through this. Now, you mentioned earlier, and you see I don't normally travel with the Bible, but I'm also now just call me Reverend Joe or Minister Joe.
Okay.
But the book of Revelations in the Bible, which I did a workshop on that book, because many people don't talk about it because they don't understand it, much like the insurance industry. And I've been fortunate that I've been shown things over the years. Now, the first question is, well, who's showing you these things? And what I call my spiritual guide, or God, or the universe, has taught me, because I've been willing to learn. So I've seen things as a younger, much younger person, many things that now I understand is coming to pass. But the book of Revelations in the Bible that's a talk about a horror movie. But what we're talking about now, I don't know how far we'll get with it, but what we're talking about, this hope, we're giving you the tools now to withstand what the book of Revelations predicted. And I say that with all seriousness about what I'm talking to you now is about what I believe to be true salvation. I said you can't look to the government, you have to look within. We're at a time now where you can't even look at your religious leaders. You have to look within. You can't look at your schools. Back in the day, we used to idolize our teachers. You know what? They're human too. They got issues. You have to look within. I'm going to keep saying that until it sinks in. You got to look within. And I think one reason people may not want to look within or even accept what I'm saying now about you are the leader of your universe, meaning your universe. And when that's perfectly balanced and in perfect harmony, then my universe doesn't collide with yours. We can walk side by side and be in peace and harmony. But people don't like that, perhaps because it puts accountability on you.
Yeah.
It's easy for me to sit back in the crowd. I'm behind you 100%, Joe. I got your back. Because it takes the light off me and puts it on you. So, if we do well, we did a good job. But if you find out that I'm really human and made some mistakes, I messed up. Well, look what you've done. You messed us up. So by taking the weight off of others and putting it back where it belongs, it puts a sense of responsibility and accountability on you. Hope. You got to believe. This is how I was able to get through those dark times. I talked about the AIDS, the drugs, and the blatant poverty that hit New York City at a certain time. Looking at the despair. It took hope. It took belief. Belief that
Times are going to get better.
times are going to get better, or whatever, that I can make this, I can do this. A lot of I offended people, like a lot of family, because I was never short on dreaming. I'm a dreamer. I remember being about 18 down on Wall Street. I used to say, you know what? Reach for the stars. I think we all should reach for the stars. Worst case scenario, you end up with a moon. You ain't did too bad, but you got to aim high. So when I came up here as a typical young black man, I wanted 3 things.
House of cards.
No, I didn't even want to. I wouldn't stay in that long. I was a hit. This was a hit and run.
Okay.
I don't like the city life. I'm more of a country boy at heart. I don't like this. It's too busy for me. But this had resources, and I came up and I wanted a Cadillac Eldorado, which I got.
Okay.
Now, 18-year-olds. I wanted a Cadillac Eldorado with the wheel on the back, the Pimp Daddy wheel, Mac Daddy, and I wanted a mink coat.
Okay.
I'll get that. And I wanted $1 million. Now, for the typical 18-year-old, that's, and I was serious about it. And I gave a lot of attention to how do I make this reality. And I'm saying it with a smile, but the point I'm making, you got to have some kind of dream.
I know. I said rich and famous, and you at least were clear. I just said rich
And
and
you got to
famous.
be clear. Thank you. Your intentions got to be clear, but they don't need to be
That's specific. Just clear.
or even perfect. You know that like your intentions or your visions and your goal, like you are a work in progress. It's okay, in life you create your own pencil, make a big eraser on it. That goal or that vision, I think I'm going to tweak that one out a little bit. It's your world. There's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah, because when I was younger, I didn't have control of my life, and I kept saying, and when I get older, when I get big, anything that's gonna involve me, I'm gonna see if I can have some say so in it. So, and I didn't realize when people were getting pissed with me at work, and even with the bowling, it's because the union was taking my money and I didn't like what they was
Yeah.
doing, so I became the shop steward so I could go and have a chat with the union.
Yeah.
And when I still didn't like it, then I became council leader and when labor management chair. Let me go talk to these people up in Albany because they screwing us over, and not realizing I'm committing professional suicide. But I thought that if the counselors or the staff down in our offices were happy, then they do a better job and people with disabilities would benefit more. Duh, duh, duh. Okay, and with bowling it was the same thing. I didn't like that the not the newer bowlers, the people who
Right.
weren't superstars, were always on the bottom and everybody at the top got all. So I started a program where everybody had a shot, an equal shot at something, and having fun was bring the fun in. So that's hope. Give me some control here, and I take issue and I step back and listen too. People think I don't, but I do step back and listen. And if I don't like what you're saying, I'm not going to back down until you show me that I may be mistaken. And that's people don't back down. I had a client now, and I ain't even getting paid. Sent him to get help from Access VR. That's
Right.
what Vested is
Right.
now. And the problem is people don't ask questions. Our people tend to not. I sent him there and I said, hint, this is the nosiest agency in the world. They ask about everything. I got a text from him. Why is she bothering me and asking me all these questions? Da, 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 da. And I said, because the state is getting ready to pay for your school and they have to document to the federal
Right.
government why they're spending that money. Well, I don't have to be telling her that she ain't nobody. And if that's the attitude that you're going in with,
Right.
what are you going to get out of this? And it's not happening fast enough. I said, excuse me. I told you about this 5 months ago. You went 2 weeks ago and you expected it to happen yesterday.
Yeah.
Let's be realistic. And our people tend not to be realistic about it's not in your time, it's in the time. Am I
You make it one thing I love about you, Hilda, you are a natural leader. This is what we're talking about you're the leader of your own world. We're each leader of our own world, and you do it naturally. So that's why as I'm talking, I know you're already going, yep, got it, Bones, got it, Joe. Move on, I got it. You do it naturally. You understand that you are responsible for your life.
exactly?
I can't look to nobody. I gotta, and I just know you personally now that you had this from a young girl on up. I got to take care of me. So it worked to your benefit. And that's what I'm talking about, this hope and looking within. You mentioned equal shot. We think of the word equal, I think of balance, even keel, or peace. We have to get to the point to have hope in this world. We have to get to the point that we can make peace within ourselves. As I'm talking to the viewers, young, old, and even myself, there are many things in life that we may have done that, given the opportunity to do it again, we wouldn't.
Many things. Many things.
But you have to make peace with that, and this this God, and I'm using that word loosely. I know we're about out of time, right?
It's not only about making the peace, though. It's accepting, because even some of the stuff that we could have done better, it wasn't all wrong.
Right.
And that's what we tend to do. We throw the baby, the bath water, and sometimes even the tub out, instead of, we need to draw from, because an error sometimes is the best thing that could have happened. I'm just saying.
I agree. I mean, I look at it this way. Every step that I've taken in my shoes in life, I've learned from it. Or I try to learn. And when I don't learn, I keep making the same steps over and over again. But,
Until we get it.
I look at life as a learning experience. Some lessons were pleasant, joyful, other lessons not so pleasant. But did I learn something? And how do I not repeat it again? And above all else, and this is where the hope comes in at, no matter what it is, can I think or visualize what I want it to be?
And with that, to be continued, because we're going to finish this conversation. We don't stop in the middle and try to rush through stuff. So I want to thank you for choosing In My Shoes. And this conversation is going to be continued next week. So be well.